I wasn't going to do any more of this, but this this tweet from PDX Scanner just cracked me up. It motivated me to watch more of this ridiculous
From
meeting.
historical, not
So
from
let's listen to it.
the surveys and things you just did. It's just
Right, which actually might be better because it's self-disclosed people, and I think Wes Charlie, the manager of the Reduced Fare program, we actually have it for that program for 5 years, so we can show.
okay.
Yep.
That would be good to see. Thanks. Thank you.
Director Way?
Thank you. I'm sorry if I didn't maybe bring this up when Nancy, you were doing your presentation, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around the overall numbers. So what is the shortfall right now? I know that there was a chart of fare revenue, and how much do we need for fares in order to make up for, the deficit? And I ask that because I think it's important just for us to know, right, what is that number that we're trying to work towards? And then B, I think, John, to just your point around, the fare mitigation. So if we deploy all these strategies to help, these particular populations with their fares, how much of that is like a savings, I guess, if that makes sense? Because right now I think the strategies are great, but I'm just not seeing the dollars that are connected.
She's trying to be progressive here, but she can't because it's not in the cards.
With how much is Trimet reabsorbing those costs, if that makes sense. So it's more of like a dollars and a cents question around just the overall picture of the fare increase and what's the shortfall that we're trying to make up.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Well, stop asking for actual facts, Kathy. There's no shortfall. Okay, it's baloney. You should know this. How come I know more about this than you? You're on the board. I'm just some schmo in a room. I'm not even in Oregon. I'm in Massachusetts. And I know more about this than any of you people.
Director Way, thank you for the question. I appreciate it. When we spoke to you in May, right, we presented to you that starting in fiscal year 2030, that we would start to see that financial cliff. So
There's the financial cliff, ladies and gentlemen. The financial cliff is facing us. We're doomed.
2030 was 66 million. In 2031, another 23.
66 million. Jesus Christ.
Million. 2032, 11 million. 2033, 10 million. So the cumulative.
What do you mean? What? So the fiscal cliff goes up and down? That doesn't even make sense.
Right? Is 365 million.
365 million. We need 365 million from the serfs. Meanwhile, we're all getting six-figure salaries. We're expanding all of our capital projects. 300. Are they kidding me? It's $5 million a year is what they're going to get from the stupid fare increase. And she's saying they're going to be 300 million. Well, I got news for you, lady. 10 years times 5 million is 50 million. Where are they getting these numbers?
As I mentioned earlier, we've gotten a little bit more aggressive in our projections on the employer payroll tax. We've added in the 30-cent fare increase. So we can pull that, push that out a couple of years, but we are still looking at close to 100 million in a deficit that we are trying to bridge. And that will be, we continue to take cost-cutting measures, right? Being very mindful of our day-to-day spending year over year. We had talked in May.
They're being very mindful. I see all the shit that you're publishing about all of these different jobs. You're really mindful. We've seen your budget. Okay, we've seen the budget. I've talked about it. I showed it on previous episodes. You're lying.
In November, that Trimet has purposely increased our unrestricted ending fund balance to anticipate those future shortfalls.
So they withheld 500 million. So that's why they withheld 500 million, because they project the fiscal cliff in 2030. See, now she explained that to me. Now I understand why they've withheld from everybody the 500 million that I've talked about and shown to be what they held back.
So we have been very prudent,
Yeah,
very wise with our spending to ensure that, that we are managing that shortfall that we will face.
Yeah,
Does that answer your question directly?
And I think
Yes.
the other part of your question, if I understood it, so as President Simmons said, the HB 217 plan calls for $29 million is an essentially subsidy, right? So $15 million.
HB 2017, let's remind everybody, that's the tax grab where they said, you're paying us whether you like it or not. We're going to grab your money because we're the government and we're going to pass it and you have no say in it. That's HB 2017.
Next year to support the Reduced Fare Program, the Summer Pass Program, and a lot of the grant programs you've heard. So that is state subsidy. So it's not adding to our shortfall, but without that, we would not be able to provide all those programs.
Yeah,
So
sure.
if you increase the participation,
Of course you couldn't because you got this huge bureaucracy, all these six-figure executives, all this shit you're doing. The last thing on your list of priorities is service.
of those programs, at some point, we'll have even greater shortfalls.
Oh, yeah, but $1 billion in shortfall.
Beyond the resources that
Right.
are allocated.
So the total is $66 million
In 1 year.
for 1 year,
In
right?
1 year, right? So,
Okay.
so even with the more optimistic employer payroll tax growth, along with a fair increase, while we can push that shortfall out and we start seeing around 100 million, keep in mind, that's just 1 year. So then you
Yeah.
have to address the next year and the next year
What are
and
they
the next
talking
year.
about? Where do they come up with 100 million? Where do you come up with this? It's just, the lie is so transparently stupid and obvious.
So we're working to close that gap. And it comes not just from raising our fares, but also looking at all of those other sources that we talked about earlier today, being very competitive with those discretionary grants, looking at our employer payroll tax, the employee payroll tax, our federal, state, and local operating grant opportunities.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. And then John, so again, I'm just trying to connect all of these pieces together.
You can't connect them, Kathy, because they're lying to you.
So that it makes sense for me.
It doesn't make sense.
So, and then when you're talking about the fare mitigation strategies, it would just be helpful for me to know, again, what would be the savings, right? I don't know if it's savings the right word or the subsidy is the right word, if we're trying to minimize the impact that the fare proposal is going to make on XYZ communities.
Certainly. So the primary savings, I think, is for a low-income individual who, if we expand the reduced fare program and we enroll them, instead of paying approximately $1,100 a year, they'll pay $328 a year. So that individual now has $700+ in buying power for groceries and
Yeah, but
cost.
what if they don't have the $320, John? Have you ever thought of that? What if they don't have the $320? If you have no money, $320 is a lot of money. I know you don't know what that's like because you're making like what, $300,000 a year? So you have no concept of poverty. You don't know what it is and you don't care anymore because now you're part of the elites.
Living. So that person, and we can do that up to 45,000 active riders, give or take, right? So those are the savings that the states and the HB 217 allows us to subsidize. And obviously that could be applied to the youth in the summer pass, right? So we're saving 30,000 youth $100 in summer pass fares, or $74, 3 months of fares, right? So just apply the subsidy by population and
No, Kathy, you're right. This doesn't make sense, Kathy. You're right. He's fast-talking you. But you're right. It doesn't make sense.
you'll get the actual savings that person or that group will experience.
I think that explanation is great. Can we just have that written down somewhere?
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
it's
do
like
it.
an additional slide or just an addendum to this, because what I'm trying to wrap my head around is the financial impact, right? So the financial impact of not doing the fare increase is this. The financial impact of us raising fares is this.
Yeah.
And then the mitigation strategy that you've proposed, the financial impacts looks like this. So I guess for me, that would be helpful, just to see what all the dollars kind of equate to?
Well, and the low-income fare program, the individual would pay an additional, let's see, they pay $125. They
How about this? How about this for a compromise? Raise the regular fares, leave the low income, leave all the handicap and low income fares alone. How about that? Okay, maybe I can accept that. Just don't blanket raise everybody's fares. I don't like that. Okay, or do less. Do a 10-cent increase every 2 years. Do a nickel. How about a nickel? That will save you from the fiscal cliff.
pay additional 15 cents on their fare, right?
Right.
So there is a cost to the individual. The subsidy is what covers the full cost between the 140 and the 280, right?
No, and so I think we're confusing different things. I
Okay.
think so. We have a proposed fare increase that's across the system, right? And the way to avoid actually seeing any increase is to ride. And if you ride twice
I
a day
see.
for 10 days, you cap your fares. There's no actual increase.
Yeah.
So but what we're saying is we have this pool of fare subsidy programs that support every population of riders that are vulnerable that you've all described. And we're saying we're going to increase the percentage and participation of those riders so
Right.
they benefit.
How are you going to increase that percentage? See, he says we're going to get more of those riders on board, but there's no way to do that. Okay, he's just making that up.
From not just the fare capping, which is the primary mitigation, but also the existing subsidies that are externally funded. And if they weren't externally funded, we wouldn't be doing, I think, this level of subsidy.
Right.
Right. So it's a little bit of apples, oranges, and potatoes, but we can give you clarity and some data about here's what this looks like and here's how. But I wouldn't equate it to the $66 million of deficit and operating cost because
Let's get this clear. The fare increase, according to their figures, is going to yield them $5 million a year. Okay? Times 10 years is $50 million. The fiscal cliff, according to that financial fraud, is $300 million. So it's just absurdity.
that's it's not the same thing. It would be greater
Okay.
it would be greater if we did not have the state funds.
Got it.
Well, and I also am drawn to a comment that Nancy Young Oliver made, which is, had we been raising fare at 2% a year, our fare would be $3.
You don't even run a system that anybody should be paying for. That's the other part of this argument that we're not. That system has been in collapse for over 2 years now, and still in collapse. So you have no right to be even talking about this until you get your system back up into actual functional stages.
And 5 cents. And so when I try to think about, trying to right size revenue to expenditures.
Oh, there's that New World War right size. That means austerity is what that means.
Obviously down the road, it's probably going to take more
She's
than
got her Klaus Schwab outfit on.
30 cents 1 year. But we're only looking at 1 year at this particular point.
Yeah, they don't even realize they're cutting themselves. Well, why am I even watching? I'm done for now because, we know what they're doing. They're doing this because the banks want them to. It's got nothing to do with fiscal cliffs. That's their front bullshit. We'll get the fiscal cliff if we don't do it. I'm done. Talk to you later.